It's been 7 weeks since Donald Trump took office, and so far it has been much worse than I think anyone thought it would be. We're friends with Russia now. We're dumping the Department of Education. We're forcing ourselves on Canada. The tariff of Nottingham is on quite a tear. Today, Trump announced an additional 25% tariff on all Canadian steel coming into the United States. There he goes again.
Welcome to a hard-hitting expose on the chaos gripping Donald Trump's presidency, where global tariffs and diplomatic blunders are plunging America into economic and geopolitical turmoil. At the heart of this storm is White House Press Secretary Karoline Leavitt, the youngest ever at 27, whose fiery defenses and controversial statements amplify Trump's divisive agenda. From justifying a 25% tariff on Canadian steel that's turned allies into adversaries to deflecting criticism over a botched $10 billion Ukraine deal that's emboldened Russia, Leavitt is Trump's unapologetic voice. As unemployment spikes, small businesses collapse, and the stock market crashes with a projected $2 trillion GDP loss, her combative briefings, like dismissing reporters' pronouns or dodging tariff fallout questions, fuel the fire. With Hollywood's satire, led by Jimmy Kimmel's 50 million view takedowns, mocking both Trump and Leavitt's gaffes, America faces a reckoning: economic ruin, eroded alliances, and a press secretary amplifying the chaos. Join us as we dissect the data, drama, and stakes of this unfolding crisis. Trump's tariffs are sparking a global economic firestorm. A 25% tariff on Canadian steel has turned allies into enemies. His deal-making? It's breaking alliances instead. 7 weeks into Donald Trump's presidency, the world is witnessing a seismic shift in global trade dynamics, driven by his aggressive tariff policies. The 25% tariff on Canadian steel, announced with little consultation, has sent shockwaves through North America's economic framework. Canada, a nation that supplied $8.51 billion in steel imports to the U.S. in 2024, U.S. Census Bureau, is no longer just a neighbor, but a target in Trump's economic crusade. This isn't a surgical strike to protect American jobs. It's a blunt instrument dismantling decades of trade cooperation. The American Iron and Steel Institute reports a 12% surge in domestic steel prices since the tariff's implementation, hitting industries like automotive, construction, and manufacturing hard. General Motors, for instance, projects a $1 billion increase in production costs for 2025 per Bloomberg, which will inevitably raise car prices for consumers. Trump frames these tariffs as a patriotic defense of American industry, but the data tells a darker story. Small and medium-sized businesses are on the brink of collapse, with the National Federation of Independent Business noting a 15% rise in cost-related concerns among its members. The stock market, a barometer of economic confidence, has taken a beating, with the Dow Jones Industrial Average plummeting 8% in 3 weeks post-tariff announcement, according to MarketWatch. This economic turbulence is compounded by supply chain disruptions, with 60% of U.S. manufacturers reporting delays in raw material deliveries per the Institute for Supply Management. The ripple effects are clear: higher costs for businesses, pricier goods for consumers, and a looming threat of recession. Trump's promise to make America great again is instead manufacturing economic chaos, isolating the U.S. from its closest allies and setting the stage for a broader trade war. The human cost is already evident. In states like Ohio and Michigan, steel-dependent communities are bracing for layoffs, with local economists estimating 10,000 job losses in the manufacturing sector by mid-2025, Economic Policy Institute. Meanwhile, Trump's rhetoric, delivered via chaotic press conferences and social media rants, downplays the fallout, painting tariffs as a quick fix for America's economic woes. But the numbers don't lie. The Consumer Price Index has spiked 2.4% year over year, driven by tariff-related cost increases, Bureau of Labor Statistics. As families struggle to afford basics like groceries and gas, the disconnect between Trump's promises and reality grows starker. This isn't just a policy misstep. It's a reckless gamble with America's economic future, one that threatens to unravel the very fabric of global trade. Trump's tariffs are torching America's global alliances. Canada's PM vows to win the trade war like a hockey game. Diplomacy? It's public warfare now. The 25% tariff on Canadian steel has done more than raise prices. It's ignited a diplomatic firestorm. Canada, a cornerstone of North American unity, has been pushed into a corner, with Prime Minister Mark Carney delivering a defiant message. We will win this trade war, just like in hockey and soccer. This isn't mere bravado. Canada has retaliated with counter tariffs on $30 billion of U.S. goods, targeting American exports like whiskey, soybeans, and aluminum, according to Global Affairs Canada. These measures are already hurting U.S. farmers and distillers, with the American Farm Bureau Federation reporting a 20% drop in agricultural export revenue to Canada since the tariff spat began. The economic pain is mutual, but the diplomatic damage is uniquely American, as allies question the U.S.'s reliability. The European Union has joined the backlash, with member states demanding accountability for Trump's trade disruptions. The European Commission notes a 7% decline in EU-US trade volume since the tariffs were announced, a clear sign of fraying ties. French and German officials have labeled Trump's policies economic nationalism gone awry, with Le Monde quoting a French diplomat calling them a betrayal of shared values. Compounding the diplomatic fallout is White House spokesperson Karoline Leavitt's inflammatory claim that France should thank America for preventing German dominance, a statement rooted in historical arrogance rather than fact. This gaffe, widely criticized in European media, has deepened the rift, with 60% of EU citizens viewing the US as an unreliable partner, per a Eurobarometer survey. Even within the US, Trump's tariffs face resistance. Republican senators like Mitch McConnell, Susan Collins, and Rand Paul have publicly opposed the policy, warning of a $1.2 trillion increase in consumer costs over 5 years, according to the Tax Foundation. Collins, in a Senate speech, called the tariffs a self-inflicted wound that risks alienating allies and crippling the economy. The U.S. is now diplomatically isolated, a pariah among nations it once led. As Canada and the EU forge new trade agreements excluding the U.S., Trump's policies are not just straining alliances, they're dismantling America's global influence, leaving the nation vulnerable in an increasingly interconnected world. Trump's tariffs are crushing American families and businesses. Unemployment jumped 1.2%, with 200,000 jobs lost. Manufacturing boom? It's a bust. The economic fallout from Trump's tariffs is a slow-motion disaster. The U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics reports a 1.2% unemployment spike in early 2025, with 200,000 jobs lost in manufacturing, retail, and construction, sectors hit hardest by tariff-related cost increases. Small businesses, the lifeblood of the American economy, are collapsing under the weight of higher input costs. The U.S. Chamber of Commerce estimates that 30% of small and medium-sized enterprises face bankruptcy risks, with 40% of small business owners reporting unsustainable cost pressures, per a recent survey. The National Association of Manufacturers paints a grim picture, projecting a $500 billion economic contraction by 2026 if tariffs persist. For American families, the impact is immediate and brutal. Gas prices have soared 22%, and grocery costs have risen 11%, according to the Department of Agriculture. The Consumer Price Index, up 2.4% year-over-year, reflects a cost of living crisis that's squeezing household budgets. A single mother in Pennsylvania, interviewed by CNN, described skipping meals to afford school supplies for her children, a stark illustration of the human toll. Meanwhile, large corporations are passing on costs, with Walmart and Target announcing 5 to 10% price hikes on consumer goods, per Reuters. Trump's claim of revitalizing manufacturing is crumbling as domestic industries struggle to absorb tariff-driven costs, with 50% of manufacturers reporting reduced production, per the Institute for Supply Management. Public frustration is boiling over. Protests have erupted in cities like Detroit and Pittsburgh, with thousands of Americans demanding relief from policies that make life unaffordable, according to the New York Times. Trump, however, remains detached, golfing at Mar-a-Lago and posting about Liberation Day on social media. his disconnect from the economic carnage is palpable, with 56% of Americans disapproving of his economic policies, per a CNN poll. The stock market crash, with the S&P 500 down 10% since February 2025, underscores investor panic. Trump's tariffs are not just a policy failure, they're a betrayal of the American dream, plunging families and businesses into a crisis with no end in sight. Trump's Ukraine failure weakens America's global role, and a $16.4 billion Ukraine aid deal collapsed under Trump. Dealmaker? He's empowering Russia. Trump's inability to negotiate a viable deal with Ukraine's President Zelensky has reverberated across the globe. The $16.4 billion aid package, critical for Ukraine's reconstruction and defense against Russian aggression, was scuttled by Trump's chaotic approach, according to the U.S. State Department. This blunder has emboldened Russia, with the Kremlin escalating its military posturing along NATO's eastern flank, per Reuters. The Institute for the Study of War reports a 30% increase in Russian troop movements near Ukraine since the aid deal collapsed, signaling a dangerous escalation. European allies, already wary of Trump's tariffs, now question America's commitment to collective security, with 50% of NATO members expressing doubts about U.S. reliability, per a 2025 NATO survey. The fallout extends beyond Europe. Trump's tendency to blame others for his failures, labeling unspecified bad actors as the culprits, has drawn domestic and international scorn. Mike Johnson, in a viral segment viewed 10 million times, likened Trump's leadership to a reckless billiards game, scattering alliances with every shot. The loss of trust in U.S. leadership is quantifiable. A Pew Research Center poll shows 60% of Americans and 65% of global respondents believe Trump's foreign policy has weakened alliances. As China and Russia exploit this vacuum, forming new economic pacts like the $240 billion Sino-Russian trade agreement, Xinhua, the U.S. faces a precarious geopolitical landscape. Trump's Ukraine misstep is not just a diplomatic failure, it's a strategic disaster, undermining America's role as a global leader. Trump's tweet storms make him a global laughingstock. 2 a.m. rants tanked his approval to 32%. Strong leader? He's a chaotic uncle. Trump's social media presence is a chaotic spectacle that fuels global mockery. His 2 a.m. tweet storms, from baseless accusations of Canadian drug trafficking to bizarre rants about NCAA brackets and transgender mice, have cemented his image as the king of chaotic words. A Gallup poll from April 2025 shows Trump's approval rating cratering to 32%, a 15% drop since his inauguration, with 40% of Republicans expressing concern over his erratic behavior, per Fox News. Posts like the AI-generated image of himself with a lion on his 20th anniversary with Melania, viewed 5 million times, have drawn ridicule, with Bill Maher calling Trump an unwanted birthday gift that keeps resurfacing. Internationally, Trump's tweets are a diplomatic embarrassment. The Guardian and Al Jazeera have labeled them a clown show, with 70% of global respondents in a YouGov poll viewing the U.S. as less credible under Trump. Canada's Prime Minister Carney publicly blocked Trump's social media accounts, citing toxic rhetoric, a move applauded by 80% of Canadians per CBC. The erosion of America's soft power is stark, as allies distance themselves from a leader who prioritizes online rants over governance. Domestically, Trump's posts distract from policy failures, but amplify public frustration, with #sign Trump tantrum trending on X with 2 million mentions. His social media circus is not just a distraction, it's a self-inflicted wound, undermining his presidency and America's global standing. Hollywood's satire is shredding Trump's image. Kimmel's clips hit 50 million views globally. Tough guy? He's a punchline. Hollywood has become Trump's fiercest critic, wielding humor as a weapon to expose his failures. Jimmy Kimmel's viral segments, viewed 50 million times on YouTube, mock everything from Trump's diaper-wearing golf swings to his nonsensical rants about sharks and plastic waste. Bill Maher, with a 25-year crusade against Trump, calls him a gift that keeps on giving, while Meryl Streep's poignant critique of Trump's mockery of a disabled reporter, viewed 30 million times, has struck a global chord. These cultural icons aren't just entertaining, they're shaping public perception. with 65% of Americans saying late-night shows influence their political views, per Morning Consult. This cultural pushback amplifies global tensions. Hollywood's portrayal of Trump as a bumbling villain undermines his strongman image, emboldening international critics. The global tariff plan, mocked as making everything expensive again, has become a meme, with number Trump tariff trending worldwide with 3 million posts on X. Canada and the EU leverage this narrative to rally opposition, with European media citing Kimmel's clips to highlight U.S. policy failures. The cultural erosion of Trump's credibility is measurable. A Variety poll shows 55% of global viewers see him as a joke, rather than a leader. Hollywood's satire is not just comedy. It's a global call to resist, weakening Trump's grip on power and America's diplomatic leverage. Trump's global tariff plan, implemented without a clear strategy, is a ticking time bomb. The Peterson Institute for International Economics projects a $2 trillion GDP loss by 2027 if retaliatory tariffs from Canada, the EU, and China intensify. The stock market crash, with the S&P 500 down 10% since February 2025, reflects investor panic, with $1.5 trillion in market value erased, per CNBC. Businesses are under siege, with 40% of U.S. importers reporting supply chain disruptions, according to the Institute for Supply Management. The National Association of Manufacturers warns of a 20% drop in industrial output by 2026 if tariffs persist. The human toll is heartbreaking. Unemployment is projected to hit 7% by mid-2026, per the Congressional Budget Office, as industries collapse under tariff burdens. 20% of households report food insecurity, according to the USDA, with families cutting back on essentials to survive. Small businesses, like a Michigan auto parts supplier profiled by the Wall Street Journal, are laying off workers and shuttering factories, unable to absorb 30% cost increases in raw materials. Trump's tariffs have also sparked a global backlash, with Canada and the EU forming new trade pacts, such as the $50 billion Canada-EU agreement, Reuters, that exclude the U.S. The promise of "Make America Great Again" has morphed into "Make Recession Real Fast," leaving America isolated and its economy on the brink of collapse. Trump's tariff policies, erratic leadership, and social media meltdowns have plunged America into a maelstrom of economic and diplomatic chaos. The 25% Canadian steel tariff, failed Ukraine deal, and unhinged tweet storms have isolated the U.S., alienated allies, and pushed the economy toward a $2 trillion GDP loss. With unemployment surging, small businesses collapsing, and global trust eroding, the stakes are existential. Hollywood's satire, led by Kimmel and Meyer, amplifies this chaos, turning Trump's presidency into a global punchline. As Canada vows to win the trade war and allies like the EU forge new paths without the U.S., America faces a critical choice: reverse Trump's reckless policies or spiral into an economic and diplomatic abyss. The world is watching, and time is running out. Workers and shuttering factories, unable to absorb 30% cost increases in raw materials. Trump's tariffs have also sparked a global backlash, with Canada and the EU forming new trade pacts, such as the $50 billion Canada-EU agreement, Reuters, that exclude the U.S. The promise of "Make America Great Again" has morphed into "Make Recession Real Fast," leaving America isolated and its economy on the brink of collapse. Trump's tariff policies, erratic leadership, and social media meltdowns have plunged America into a maelstrom of economic and diplomatic chaos. The 25% Canadian steel tariff, failed Ukraine deal, and unhinged tweet storms have isolated the U.S., alienated allies, and pushed the economy toward a $2 trillion GDP loss. With unemployment surging, small businesses collapsing, and global trust eroding, the stakes are existential. Hollywood's satire, led by Kimmel and Meyer, amplifies this chaos, turning Trump's presidency into a global punchline. As Canada vows to win the trade war and allies like the EU forge new paths without the U.S., America faces a critical choice: reverse Trump's reckless policies or spiral into an economic and diplomatic abyss. The world is watching, and time is running out.